the United States is very important because we've just had an election in the United States. It's likely to impact on a so-called fiscal cliff. And my view is that unlike what the press is doing, is that the fiscal cliff is probably going to be pretty much a non-event. I think the Republicans is in a position today where they will try to accommodate the Democrats more than what would have been the case if the results were the other way around. And I think the US economy is probably going to surprise on the upside for the next year or so. But that's the short-term view. Over the longer term, clearly what is happening is the United States is certainly heading in a very difficult direction, simply because their debt levels are very high and increasing. After the fiscal cliff, the end of this year, the markets are likely to concentrate in Europe again. And the question is going to be asked again, will the euro survive? That's a question that no economist can really answer, but we try our best. I think chances are that the Greeks will somehow be accommodated. I think chances are quite good that the Spanish will eventually be forced to ask for a bailout, like many other, like the Greeks, for example. And I think chances are that the euro is going to stay intact, because the alternative can be quite devastating to the world financial markets. But it doesn't mean that European economies are going to grow. In fact, chances are quite good that the European economies as a group will probably report economic growth of around about zero, maybe even a recession for next year. So the main reason for that, again, is pretty much the same as the United States. They have too much debt. So the West is pretty much in a very difficult position, in that the West's, or the debt levels of the West, really put them in a precarious position where they are, where economic growth over the next, say, 10 or 20 years are going to be very, very weak. That, however, is only part of the story. For South Africa, that is very important, because the West remains our most important trading partners, but we are part of the rest. And that's where the good news story is. Looking, for example, at the Chinese, there are 1.5 billion Chinese. They're going to start eating chicken. They're going to buy microwave ovens. They're going to become consumers. They're pretty much the same for the Indians. There are 1 billion Indians. They're going to start eating protein more. They're going to become consumers as well. For South America, for Africa, there are 1 billion people of Africa. They are becoming consumers. And the best news is they do not have debt. And the old so-called Second World, Eastern Europe, the old Soviet Union, those economies will all contribute this mountain of consumers, which will really propel the globe's economy forward over the next 50 years. It's not going to be a straight line. It's not going to be easy. It's going to be a rough ride every now and again. And in the short term, there are things like, for example, the fiscal cliff and European situation that can derail this momentum. But I am pretty confident that South Africa, as part of the emerging economies, part of BRICS, will participate in this wave of economic growth that is going to overwhelm the world economy over the next number of decades.